Hey everyone, Christy, happy Sunday, wherever it is, whenever it is you are. Sorry for the slight delay there. I didn't want to turn on the outside my mic until the music was down. It was a thing. Anyway, hello. Hi, how you doing? Happy Sunday. Wow. It has been another week in America. 2020. 2020. Wow. Yeah, 2020's been its own category of year. I think we can agree. There's just nothing like what we're seeing 2020-wise in terms of my lifetime ever. Think about where we've been since January. We've had the tail end of... Actually, was the entire impeachment thing in January? No, they tried to get it done before Christmas, right? So the House did the impeachment in 2019, but the Senate took up impeachment. So we did impeachment in the first couple weeks of the year. Then we had the global pandemic that we're currently still experiencing, and then we had the what do you call it, the spontaneous, finally, I don't want to call it an uprising. It's not really an uprising. I guess pushback with peaceful protests and harnessing this frustration that Black people are just tired of being abused, of being killed, of watching their families being killed, and they're just weary and frustrated. And I think there was a lot of anyway. So that happened, and it's not even halfway through the year yet. So we're processing a lot as a country. We've been through a lot of trauma. Some of it politically self-imposed by the choice that a bunch of mostly, overwhelmingly, white people made last year to give us, I would say, an abusive and dysfunctional relationship with our executive branch. I feel like I've been put into an arranged marriage with Donald Trump politically, with him being at the head of our government. And it's been an abusive, terrible relationship with somebody who has a narcissistic personality, is sociopathic, and seems to be drifting towards increasing non-compos mentis mental faculties. And we haven't been able to leave. We haven't been free to just walk out the door. We have the chance in November, and that's what a lot of people are focusing on. So it's been quite a year, but I want to just take a moment, because we don't have that many opportunities to just enjoy something. Maybe enjoy something too that doesn't make us feel guilty for enjoying it. And you might think Schadenfreude is kind of a weird thing to like, oh, I'm taking enjoyment in the suffering of others. But in this case, the suffering person has done it to himself, so it has sort of a karmic level of absolution. We don't have to feel like we're bad people because we didn't wish necessarily a bad thing to happen to this person. They mess things up, and then consequences happen to them. It's out of our hands. So let's just savor, let's just sit in the moment of Trump's utter failure in Tulsa, Oklahoma last night. Let's just sit and enjoy the stink of his, own self-imposed, sweat-laden humiliation under those hot lights of the arena, sweating on camera with his bad makeup line, as always. Boil over. Yeah, the lucky wanderer. Things boiled over. Of course, with people, with Black Americans, and not just Black Americans, anyone who's Black living in the United States, especially, and people of color, as a more general group. I think it's very important that while we acknowledge these discrimination things happen to people of color, and there was a coverage of a story of a Hispanic man who was a security guard who was shot and killed by police, and I'm sure that's going to be also, like, these issues are being heightened, so the media are paying more attention and they're covering it more in depth than they would have probably normally. But because of the systemic nature of racism against Black people in America and Black Americans and African Americans, I think it's important that we really have an opportunity to narrowcast about the specific concerns within a community, as opposed to just generalizing it out to the point where it's sort of like, too piecemeal. So I think everyone should have their time, like we should focus on the unique dimensions. My thoughts on the student loan crisis. Yeah, the student loan crisis. So I could just say I'm part of the student loan crisis. I have basically a mortgage, a house mortgage's worth of student loans. I will not pay it off until I am collecting Social Security. And that's only because after 25 years of repayments, they forgive the rest of your debt. So the student loan crisis is definitely something that, it's kind of like the credit card crisis from the 1990s, where people were taking out a lot of credit. And I think there have been a bunch of good proposals. And I think that there should be wider debt forgiveness. The problem, though, I just want to say, like, the thing about focusing on the student loan crisis, and I think it is important, only about 30% of Americans go to college, go to university. And so, although the kinds of voters you talk to about the student loan crisis, because they have student loans, have probably, some college or a college degree, and we know that education is a predictor of political engagement. So people with a college degree are more likely to pay attention and therefore want to talk about the student loan crisis. But a lot of people who never had an opportunity to go to college, there's no kind of equivalent discussion about, yes, there's tuition-free university and tuition-free programs, but yeah, I just think it's kind of it tends to skew white and skew middle class. If I'm honest, like obviously rich white people don't have to worry about their student loans, but because of the way the distribution of because of racism, institutional racism in education, things like that, it tends to skew, for me at least, perception-wise, as a whiter issue and a more middle class issue. But right now I pay $600 every month. No, it actually went down a little bit. I pay $545 every month in student loan payments. And my rent is 600 euros. So I know about the student loan crisis. I know how it eats up your income and it stops you from saving. So yeah, I think that there's and I don't actually, if you wanted to federalize a program, I would nominate federalizing or nationalizing all student loans. There's just literally no reason for, and I didn't want to get around talking about this. I want to talk about Trump, but as long as we're on this topic, the federal government is perfectly capable of loaning money out to students and then collecting the interest and using any interest made to fund other programs in the future. Because at least the way that I understood it to work back when I was doing student activism, because the loans are federally backed, so if you get a federally subsidized student loan, one, the federal government pays for your interest while you're in school. So the government's already paying to cover your interest to make sure it's not compounding while you're actually getting your education. And then when you leave education, if you default on your loan, the private companies just hand the debt over to the government and go, hey, this is your problem, please pay us what's owed. And the federal government will just pay out what's left on the loan and then try to be the debt collector. So why even have private companies involved with that? They're just adding staff and profits and administrative costs and everything else. So I think restructuring loans, reforming loans, nationalizing the loan process, all of there's a whole bunch of good solutions to the student loan crisis. All right, so let's talk about Trump. And yeah, the other thing too, so about the cost of universities in America, there is a lot of money spent on things that have nothing to do with education in order for campuses to be comfortable. So athletic-sized or Olympic-sized swimming pools and having PowerPoint presentation, having on-screen displays or something in campuses and having the newest, coolest, latest technology. There's a lot of things that end up sucking up money to have a quality experience that is a bit of a feedback loop. Like if I'm going to pay $15,000 a year, I don't want to sit in a dank room that's dripping water and has mold in it because where's my tuition money going? But on the other hand, when universities do these kind of upgrades and like building projects, it ends up driving up their costs and their debts over time. So there's a whole funding issue, that could be looked at. But I really just want to talk. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off of this. Let's talk about Trump. Let me show you what I want to show you. Let me get this conversation focused. And it's my fault. I was the one who was completely unfocused. Oh yes, let's all just. I have my coffee here. There isn't, like I said, there's not a lot of things to enjoy. So let's just, how, so the way you're meant to eat chocolate, sorry, I'm gonna get some coffee first. Apparently the way you're meant to eat chocolate, if you do it like a chocolate taster in a competition or whatever, is you're meant to put a piece of chocolate on your tongue and then kind of hold it up to the roof of your mouth and slowly let it dissolve so that the chocolate can cover the entire surface area, sort of like of your tongue, so you get the full range of flavors available to you to experience whatever that chocolate has. And so I want to, I'm looking at Lucky Wanderer. Yes, you derailed the conversation. You're my Kevin today. Let's just take this absolute total failure of Donald Trump and just kind of roll it around the tongue. Let it dissolve in our mouths slowly. Let the full rich texture of all of the painful and humiliating experiences behind it really come out. And the way I wanted to do this is I saw an article on CNN, and it just seemed to do a great job of covering that. So I thought we would go over it together because I really don't have much else for you this week. We've talked a lot about racism, and I want to continue to do it, but I need to I think it was kind of time to change it up and let events happen and move this onto the conversation. So we're just going to take a little schadenfreude break. And look at this article by Kevin Liptak and Caitlin Collins entitled "Sick Staff and empty seats, how Trump's triumphant return to the campaign trail went from bad to worse. Oh, where's my popcorn? I need popcorn. Okay. Let me also just check the chat really quick. Hold on. Oh, I see. I need to up technical things. I want to bigger your screen because it's kind of tiny on my second screen relative to the other one. So there you go. Now you guys can maybe see yourselves a little bit better too. Probably, I'd say. Okay. And then at the end of the show too, if you guys stick around, I'll talk a little bit about the book club. I think I'm going to stick to Tuesdays because I just can't do 2 shows in a row. I find my energy levels are too low. I'm low energy after a 1-hour show or a 2-hour show on a Sunday after streaming the night before on D&D. All right, so they write. And this is a commentary and parody or satire or whatever, so fair use on this one article. I wish they would just allow every page, though, to have night mode. I really prefer night mode to day mode. But anyway. By the time President Donald Trump was gliding in his helicopter toward Joint Base Andrews on Saturday, destined for what he'd once hoped would be a triumphant packed to the rafters return to the campaign trail, things were already looking bad. See, we know where this is going, so we're like, anticipation, yes, let's watch him fall on his face. Scanning cable news coverage earlier in the day, Trump was disappointed to see pictures not of massive lines forming outside the Bank of Oklahoma Center in Tulsa, but of Jeffrey Berman, the federal prosecutor Trump's attorney general had attempted unsuccessfully to dismiss the night before, a person familiar with his response said. All right, so first let's just talk about how Trump undermines himself. Because he's like the guy walking on the rake, but he just keeps stepping on it over and over and over again. He trips up his own messaging because of his ego and because of his impulsiveness and because he's a big childish baby. So the Southern District of New York was the district that got Michael Cohen put into prison. And they are investigating Trump's link to Deutsche Bank, which seems to have been a place where Trump laundered a bunch of his money or got a Russian-backed loan. Sorry, I'm sorry for all the shaking and stuff, but my computer laptop, if it gets a little bit warm, it just starts to fan itself, and it's really annoying, and so I need to kind of turn the laptop in such a way that its back end can breathe. So, anyway, all right, sorry, adjusted, continuing on. And why would you choose the day before your rally? Like, if he really wanted to get rid of this Berman guy, he could have waited till next week. He could have waited until after the rally. But you would think that somebody who's in the media would know that a fight between Trump and his own, his federal prosecutors would get media attention. So, again, tactical error, just unforced error in this way, where Trump is, he's stepping on his own story. He's stepping over his own. Am I centered? I think I need to be a little bit farther down. There we go. Yeah, that looks better. So you just like bing, 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 dumb butt. I'm trying to be monetized on a Sunday. Silly butt face. Yeah, I guess we'll call him silly butt face. Just decides to step over his own story, and then. He doesn't even get the firing correct. He can't even get I don't even think that they talk about the Barr thing here, but let me just update you on the Barr drama. All right. So Bill Barr goes out and says, "Oh yes, the Southern District of New York federal prosecutor is resigning his post, and because they're resigning their post, we're going to organize this person to replace it." And the guy Berman was like, "The F I am." Like, what are you saying? I'm resigning. I didn't agree to any kind of resignation. And according to the way the statutes work, Barr couldn't do what he was trying to do. He was trying to basically illegally install somebody that was a Trump crony, as opposed to following the procedures. So Berman just went, no, you didn't. No, I didn't say that. You didn't say this. This is not happening. Like, if you want to fire me, then you fire me. But don't tell me that I'm resigned, because I haven't. And, Bill Barr is definitely evil. And actually, he seems slightly incompetent. He's messed up things before. In the past, he just tends to get a lot of passes because we have such low standards in the Trump era for these kinds of things. So then, yesterday, during the rally bit, Bill Barr's office comes out and goes, "Yes, I've had the president personally fire this Berman guy." And then the newspapers, the reporters who saw Trump heading out for his rally asked, President Trump, why did you fire Jeffrey Berman? And Trump just goes, "Oh, I don't have anything to do with that. That's the job of the Attorney General. I'm not involved. It has nothing to do with me." So clearly Trump wanted to keep his hands clean. Trump didn't want to be the one to personally fire Berman because he is the one who is going to personally benefit. He and his friends are going to personally benefit. So it's just transparently corrupt by having Trump do this. So he tried to get, of course, his little assassin out there, Bill Barr, to be his, he was saying D&D, like a meat shield. Oh yeah, you go throw yourself, put yourself out there for me. But Barr didn't have the power to do what the president wanted. So in the end, he had to get his hands dirty. They're just, nothing really matters. Yep. The little thing in the chat. Wow. So that wasn't even covered, I don't think, in this story. But Trump managed to draw a whole bunch of attention to the fact that he was firing the person who was investigating Rudy Giuliani, Deutsche Bank, I don't know what else, other investigations that are going on, but his money and his international ties. Oh my God, we haven't even talked about the John Bolton book. We haven't even talked about John Bolton's book for this week, right? So Trump, again, acting like a fascist, the fascist dictator he really has always been trying, it's coming out of him now. He's always been this. In the first year, people were trying to hem him in, and ever since his first year in office, he's just been increasingly authoritarian, dictatorial, and fascistic and anti-democratic. He's just evil. He's is he the Antichrist? Who knows? I might make a video, is Trump the Antichrist? That's what I should do today, and take comments of preachers describing things about Obama or Bill Clinton, saying that was the sign of the Antichrist, and then just put Trump doing worse. But anyway, so yeah, John Bolton, Trump, way too late, after they'd published the book that John Bolton wrote to sell out the country because he wouldn't testify under oath. He wanted to monetize his knowledge of Trump's crimes. So he wrote a book, and it was cleared in terms of information and the classified level, and it was printed and sent out to reviewers, and Trump started to get wind that people were reviewing John Bolton's book, and because he has, no attention span, he'd forgotten about this book, tried to get it banned, tried to stop free speech in America. And on Saturday, that case came down, and John Bolton's book is allowed to be distributed. So he lost that on Saturday too. And can I just say, when it comes to John Bolton and Trump, let them fight. I'm rooting for injuries in that situation. Put them in the wrestling ring. Let John Bolton go and go up and throw himself against Trump. Let Trump, whatever. Let them fight. I just want to, both of those people deserve the kind of same energy and consequences to themselves that they put out into the world. How would I just say that? Cling. So, okay. So we're only not even through the first two paragraphs. Trumpets shall herald the coming of the Antichrist. Trumpets. Got it. Oh, that's good. Not gonna, I wouldn't kill a homophobe, but I'm not gonna shed a tear if they die of various kinds of cancer. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a difference between maliciously wanting someone harmed and also not feeling pity for them when they experience the consequence of their actions. Now, obviously, I get the impulse, feeling a defensiveness of people and the violation of people that Trump imposes on refugees, the way that he terrorizes DACA kids, the way that he's a bigot against Muslims, the way that he's dismissive and dehumanizes African Americans, Black people generally. You just want, the whole punchable face thing. And we all resist that urge. We all, mostly, I hope, we resist that urge. That's what the frontal lobe is for. But just watching somebody who, let's say, is, causing, is spraying something on the ground to make everybody trip, and then they trip themselves and break their hip, that I'm going to laugh at. All right, so homophobia is a failure in education. I think a lot of phobias are failures in education. And also, homophobia is certainly an optional and consciously selected element in religious fundamentalism that people choose to emphasize. There's a lot of things. Like, think of Christians were as upset about adultery as they are about homosexual people. Imagine if they just campaigned and crusaded against divorced people and divorcees the way they do against gay people. But they don't. They decide to emphasize one and look the other way at the other. So, yeah. All right, so hours later, this is when he was getting his news coverage of Jeffrey Berman because he tried to fire the person investigating him, which in a democracy just undermines it as a state of a rule of law and turns it into a puppet, sort of a tin pot dictatorship. Hours later, the president was informed. Listen to this. Hours later, the president was informed 6 campaign staffers in Tulsa had tested positive for coronavirus ahead of his scheduled arrival. An unfortunate reminder of the ongoing pandemic Trump's critics say he is ignoring. So you find out the venue you're going to. So an advanced team, for people who don't know, I worked on a couple of advanced teams when I worked for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Each president, the president, the vice president, the first lady, and the vice president first lady, or VP FLOTUS, they all have their own advanced teams. And what an advanced team does is they go and they go out a couple days before an event. They work with the Secret Service to first ensure the safety of whoever the principal is in the visit, and then they also work with the on the ground people coordinating it to help make it look really professional and consistent. So having certain kinds of flags, or size flags, or giving advice on the staging or how to set up the crowd. So they have where to put things for a photo op and all this sort of stuff. So they kind of combine their cookie cutter knowledge of how an event should go with the local flavor of what the event venue is like, and the lighting and the seating and the equipment available and all that. All right. So they're usually, Secret Service comes about a week and they do their thing or so. It depends on who it is. The president gets more security than anyone else. The president actually has to have a secure communications on-site access whenever he goes anywhere in case there's any kind of world emergency. You can't just say, oh, he's out of the office. So it's a big deal to have a presidential visit. It requires a lot of people and a lot of staff and a lot of interactions because you're dealing with the venue staff. You're dealing with the not just the venue staff for the booking, but also the physical setup, all of the workers who are there to help set up all of the seats in the auditorium, say, or to organize things in terms of fire safety and handing out masks and whatnot. And then there's just the local party people you're dealing with. And then these staffers apparently were going out to restaurants and going out to dinners and bars and just living their lives. And 6 of them tested positive for the coronavirus, which means they've had to have been exposed to the coronavirus for long enough for antibodies or whatever testable material they need from the back of their nose or however they're doing it now. They had to have exposure and have been exposed long enough to show that they had exposure. And instead of saying, wow, my people on the ground have already been exposed, maybe we should call this off. Maybe this isn't a safe thing to do if my staff people are going to be linked now through contact tracing to the spread of a virus, the spread of a pandemic in a city where I'm visiting. Maybe that's not the best look for me going forward on my campaign. Maybe I should rethink this. Donald Trump doesn't rethink. So when he learned that 6 people had been had tested positive for coronavirus, he just didn't care. What does he care? They're just staff people. They can get more of them. He had his rally to go to. He needed this. This was about him. So, yeah, after initially dismissing the revelation, a source familiar with his reaction said, Trump erupted. He erupted when it was subsequently reported in the media, overtaking coverage of the rally itself. What did he think was going to happen? They were going to be able to keep it secret? That 6 of his own advanced staff people had tested positive for coronavirus and they were working on his event? He just didn't expect that kind of stuff to get out. And when it did, he was angry about it. He didn't care that people were exposed to the virus doing their work for him. He didn't care that 6 people who are his helpers and his staff and designed to help to get him reelected could maybe be dead in 2 months if they get, have symptoms and end up with a very severe case of the coronavirus symptoms and, effects. No. He was mad because the fact that his event was spreading disease among his own staff was getting media coverage. Well, of course it is. Absolutely. Okay. Oh, yeah, you guys are having a separate conversation in the chat. I'll just let you go. Still, a determined Trump was intent on breathing new life into his staggering campaign. He took off for Tulsa, convinced large swaths of his supporters would be waiting for him there. Now, we all remember, I think, well, maybe not, but on the happy hour, I mentioned to Kevin the trolling. I saw this sort of, it was like a Karen-aged woman, and she wasn't, I'm sure, the person who originated it, but there was a white woman, maybe a little bit older than me, going, hey, y'all, if we should all do this en masse. We should all just ask for tickets, and then they'll think all these people are coming and nobody will come. I should track down that video. I think it's in my bookmarks. All hail Karen, in this case. And again, I'm not saying she's original, and people couldn't have independently come up with this idea, but I did see specifically someone circulating this as a suggestion of things to do. And the Trump campaign was just crowing all week. Oh my gosh, we've got 300,000 people signed up for our rally. We have 500,000 people signed up to come to our rally. We have 800,000 people. The venue held 19,000. So what what happened was they didn't expect to get trolled. They got trolled on a massive level, like an unbelievably massive level. Honestly, once they hit 100,000, they should have just, capped it and said no more tickets or something along those lines. But instead, they got greedy because what the campaigns do with this data, with these events, is they get your mobile information and they get other contact email information about you, and then you go into their database and they start to try to profile you. Well, now their data is crap because they have a whole bunch of people who hate them who signed up for these tickets. And they're not going to know inside their data set, who the trolls were and who were the people who just decided not to come. So out of these million people who signed up, maybe, 20,000 of them were legit, which means 980,000 were fake. So this was going on and they were clueless. They had no idea that this was happening. So Trump is convinced at this point that there are people, they think the Trump campaign believed their BS so much that instead of saying, oh, you know what, this is classic. This is so great. All right. So instead of saying, hey, we're obviously going to exceed capacity, which they didn't, we need to stop. All right. You know what? Sorry, we've got a terrible person. Goodbye. Yeah, you're just gone. Anyone who's going to be in here typing all lives matters is obviously a jerk trying to distract from Trump's humiliation. So, bye. Go. Goodbye, clown. Goodbye, clown. We're going to talk about how Trump embarrassed himself. We're going to keep going. All right, where was it? Oh, yeah. It gets better. Gets better. The humiliation gets better, right? All right, so they actually think all these people in the middle of a global pandemic are going to be showing up and milling around and wanting desperately to hear Trump speak. So instead of saying, you know what, we're going to stop advertising tickets. We're going to stop giving away free tickets after 100,000 because that's already like 4 times the capacity of the venue. No, here's what we're going to do. Trump campaign, Smart Bill Parscale or whatever Brad, and I will figure out his name because he's going to get, well, actually, you won't need to know his name because he's about to lose his job. They go, oh, let's spend more money. So the Trump campaign is already in Oklahoma, which he won by like double digits, 20 some points or 30 points. He doesn't need to go to Oklahoma 5 months before the election in order to swing Oklahoma to him. Oklahoma is not a place where he's trying to compete. It's a pacifier. He wants to be adored. He wants to be cheered. He wants to have thousands of people encouraging him to be racist and awful, right? He feeds off that. He needs that energy like a vampire. So they're like, oh, here's what we'll do. We're going to rent more space. We're going to cost the campaign even more money. And we're going to set up a second stage. We're going to build. We're going to rent. We're going to pay for the cost to rent and construct an outdoor stage to hold an additional 40,000 people with lighting and acts, and we're just going to throw money at this problem. They just threw money at this event because Trump, we'll talk about this a little bit later, he kind of didn't feel his kickoff was, last year was a real one because things have gotten distracted since then. And if you remember, it was about this time 4 years ago that he came down the staircase, right? So he really wanted some like big event with thousands of people cheering him in order to really kick off his campaign again, to relaunch it, restart it. Sorry. So they built an overflow capacity for an extra 40,000 people. And they even scheduled Trump to give a second speech just to the outdoor crowd. And so their image was he's going to have thousands of adoring MAGAs indoors and outdoors. Like, people are going to be so thirsty. They're so thirsty for the Donald D that they're going to travel and expose themselves potentially to a lethal virus, which admittedly, sorry, I didn't, a couple thousands of them did. But all right, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but just like understand how humiliating this was, and also how much money they wasted, for I think it was like 12,000, 13,000 people. All right, yes, thanks, mods. Don't feel bad to use the ban hammer. I mean, obviously you give them a warning. I prefer. I mean, it's your choice because you're a mod and I trust your judgment. But if you give them a timeout and they still continue to spam, yeah, go ahead and bring the ban hammer. Just smash them on the head. We don't want that crap here. You want me to hide them from the channel? Yeah, I can do that too. Oh no, they're hidden on this channel. Let me remove that. I don't know how much more we can remove. Boom. Okay, so where were we? We were, yes. So the coverage of the campaign rally on the day that Trump is flying out to do his victory lap, his election Viagra boost. He's going out for a dose of his campaign Viagra. We'll just call it that right now. Yeah, these rallies are about him, not about voters. So the coverage is that 6 of his own advanced staff have tested positive for the virus. And they're also getting information, what was it? That, in his bill, his prosecutor drama is all taking up airtime as opposed to like looking at all the MAGA people, right? Still, a determined Trump, the article goes on, was intent on breathing new life into his staggering campaign. He needed that Viagra boost. He took off for Tulsa, convinced large swaths of his supporters will be waiting for him. We did that already. Things did not improve once Air Force One lifted off. The president received a report that only about 25 people were assembled in the overflow space that the campaign had reserved for a crowd Trump claimed 5 days earlier would top 40,000. Plenty of good seats still available. Imagine going to like a baseball game or a football game or anything else, and in the stadium that seats 40,000, and there are like you and 20 and less than around 2 dozen other people there. Like, sit where you want. Oh, I just can't. I'm picturing him being told the news of how like completely rejected he's being, and it makes me feel so good. Think about his disappointment and his humiliation, because he was on there bragging 40,000 people, going to the reddest of red states in order to throw out the worst kind of hate and bile, and he just got nothing for it. 2 hours before the rally was set to begin, people who had signed up for tickets received an urgent text message from the Trump campaign. I don't know why I'm so... sorry, I don't know what frog I've got in my throat. Let me just try to wet my whistle. Wow, that's an old-fashioned phrase. Has anyone said that since the 1970s? 1950s, maybe. All right. So they started realizing how empty everything was. They started mass spamming people who were trolling them for tickets. Can you imagine, like, living somewhere in Oakland, California, or Madison, Wisconsin, or somewhere in Philadelphia, and you signed up for the Trump tickets because you just wanted to take the mick out of the Trump campaign, and like you get a random text from them going, "Hey, the time is almost here, and there's still space available." Like, I'm not going to your damn rally. How desperate, how thirsty are you? Oh, so thirsty. So thirsty. When the president landed in Tulsa at 5:51 p.m. Sorry, I don't mean to cough in you guys, but for some reason I'm just a bit stuffy this morning. Air Force One flew over the... yes, this is great. When the president landed in Tulsa at 5:51 p.m. local time, the crowds his aides had promised him had failed to materialize. Air Force One flew over the arena where Trump had been told thousands of supporters would be waiting to hear from him before he went inside, but saw nothing resembling the sea of people he'd been expecting. So apparently they were gonna do I don't know if this is true or not, but I did see on Twitter, and it does kind of comport with what this story is saying, that Trump was going to do like a low flyover in Air Force One so that he could be seen flying in by his adoring crowds and they could cheer him, their god in the sky, like, the Trump king, we praise you, Donald. But there weren't enough people outside to make it worth it, so he didn't do it. And then when he found out that there weren't 40,000 people waiting for him outside, they actually just canceled the outside appearance, given the apparent lack of enthusiasm. Just rejection after rejection after rejection. And this was supposed to be his psychological boost. This was supposed to be like his being vindicated for all of his policies, right? That he can do whatever and his people still love him. His people will turn out for him. MAGA people. Maybe I do have the coronavirus. I have a lot of unproductive coughing today. I don't know why that is. All right, so while he was in the air, the campaign had canceled the outside appearance given the apparent lack of enthusiasm. Can you imagine being like, I don't want to go I don't want to go indoors because someone might be, I'm MAGA, but I don't want to go indoors because I might get exposed to something and I have a health issue. So I'll go to the outside event, me and 23 other people, and we'll see. They just start before he arrived, they started taking the stage down. They started dismantling. They moved the people away from it and started dismantling so Trump wouldn't have to look at it when he came indoors. Oh, it's just so beautiful. It's just so wonderful. It just heartens. It's like everything went wrong. Like every part of the story from the moment Trump gets up that day everything starts to go wrong, and I love it. It is just so refreshing to see him fall flat on his face and be humiliated, because he does so many awful things and he gets away with it. So he gets up, he's got his rally day is, well, first, of course, it had to be moved. We'll get onto that. But then even on the day itself, it's just getting, media stories are trampling all over the narrative he wants to control. Oh. Once viewed inside the White House and Trump's campaign as a reset button for a presidency beset by crises and self-inflicted wounds, Saturday evening's campaign rally in Tulsa instead became plagued with pitfalls, a disappointing microcosm of the blind spots, denial, and wishful thinking that have come to guide this president as he enters one of the most precarious moments of his first term and only term. Again, sorry. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time speaking today. By the time he strode out to the strains of Lee Greenwood on Saturday evening into a partially full Bank of Oklahoma Center, the event had devolved from a triumphant return. Look at this pathetic loser in the chat. Oh. He's still an unhide user on this channel. Oh, this is funny. Here you go, Rory Cats. I'm going to hand out a few more ban hammers. You guys can have fun smashing this person. You can do it as a group. You can see who can make it there first. Who else we got here? I can give a... No, not you. Sorry for the distraction, and we'll get back to the story of Trump's humiliation. Wow. Really a troll account? Yeah, okay. So anyway, yeah, I'll give out more mods, and you guys can see who can be the first person to smash the trolls. It'll be a race. Where was I? Yes, the event had devolved from a triumphant return to the campaign trail after a 100-day pandemic-forced absence into something else altogether, a public humiliation on par with nothing we've ever seen before in presidential politics. How about that? The launch of a new assault on former Vice President Joe Biden. Thank you, use it capriciously. I don't know who you are, PSM Tech. I screen. I screen people. There's a couple other people I would give mods because I've seen them over the course of the couple weeks. Let me see. I think most people that I think all the people I know generally I've modded. So there's enough of you now. Yes. Sorry, I don't mean to keep coughing at you guys. The launch of a new assault on former Vice President Joe Biden fizzled, replaced by recycled grievances and race baiting. The sparse crowd was a reminder that many Americans, even Trump supporters, remain cautious of a pandemic that continues to rage in places like Oklahoma, where cases are spiking, even if Trump is ready to move on. Can we just compare this like this complete humiliation? He wanted to make this night, there's supposed to be a discussion about race relations, right? And he was gonna like have a 2020 campaign. All he's doing is running his greatest hits of 2016, which people don't care about anymore. And even his own supporters were yawning. Did you see that? We were like, on the show. It was great. Yeah, I kind of have the feeling that PSM Tech is the spammer as well. So feel free, if someone steps out of line, go ahead and ban them. The sparse crowd was a reminder, yes. Basically, reality is setting in for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has generally been able to defy political gravity. He's managed to harness enough of the hate inside and fear inside some really bigoted, especially like proportionally wise, white people, but also he draws people from different ethnic backgrounds at a much lower rate who buy into his rhetoric. But yeah. All right, aides were anxiously... Oh, yeah, sure. I will go ahead and post the link to this article in the chat. There you go. Ah, wrong. There you go. That should be it. Aides were anxiously awaiting his response to a less than stellar turnout. Aware he has threatened to fire officials in the past when his rallies ended in disappointment. Has there ever been a more disappointing rally? Oh, I want to see other disappointments that peak this one, but I'm definitely, this to me is the apex or the nadir, depending on your perspective of Trump rallies so far. Quote, "You are warriors. We had some very bad people outside. They were doing bad things, but I really do appreciate it," Trump told his crowd, appearing to explain away the empty seats as the result of thugs outside the arena, even though CNN teams on the ground said they did not see violence or people blocking entrances. He can never take responsibility or understand why he's failed. He always has to blame someone else and make himself the victim. After a nearly 2-hour speech notable mainly for its discursiveness, Trump left Tulsa on Saturday night, having spent around 3 hours in the city. The 6 advanced staffers who had tested positive for coronavirus remained in their hotel rooms, quarantined for the foreseeable future. From the moment the word Tulsa slipped from Trump's mouth 2 Wednesdays ago, things seemed to start going south. First, there was the problem with the rally's date, which the president begrudgingly changed after learning it coincided with Juneteenth, the holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. The new slot, he complained, would draw fewer viewers. Again, sorry for the coughing. So yeah, we'll get into it, but he basically is interested not in terms of like connecting with people in a state and turning out, he wants to just get good TV ratings. He's so psychotic that is his only frame of reference. Then there was the location, which Trump did not view as a problem, even though plenty of others around him were wary of riling a city with a violent racist history in the middle of a national racial reckoning. The notion of packing supporters into a crowded arena amidst a resurgence in coronavirus cases was always going to be an issue. But half a dozen staffers on the advance team testing positive was a wrinkle that Trump had not anticipated when he insisted a rally be placed on his schedule. In the middle of May, Trump began quizzing aides when he might be able to return to the campaign rallies that have long been one of the few aspects of being a politician he enjoys. Confined to the White House for months amidst a pandemic that had caused a once hot economy, I don't know if I agree with that, to ice over, Trump repeatedly, ice over? Try depression levels of unemployment. Some of the characterizations in there, the article I could quibble with, but Trump repeatedly asked that a rally be put on the calendar, even as public health officials warned against large gatherings. For weeks, Trump's requests that a rally were put off or slow-walked, with health warnings as rationales. When the administration's top public health experts did not weigh in specifically on campaign rallies, their views of resuming large gatherings were well known amongst Trump staffers. But as large protests began to form over the death of George Floyd, the black man who died after a white police officer knelt on his neck, the arguments against convening a rally seemed harder to make, particularly to the president, who said if protesters could gather in large numbers, then so could his supporters. Oh my gosh, if people can if people can go outside and socially distance and wear masks in the most responsible way possible in order to prevent more deaths, well, then we should be able to put a bunch of people inside a confined space without face masks and in close contact in order to adore me and my little wee-wee. With Trump more than intent than ever on returning to the trail, his senior campaign team scrambled to identify a location that could both guarantee a large crowd and provide a cooperative governor and mayor who would allow a major gathering of people, potentially indoors, to proceed, despite continued warnings against such events by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Who would be dumb enough to let Trump come and hold an unnecessary rally in a state he doesn't need to campaign in order to soothe his ego? How many governors and mayors were willing to let their citizens die in order to feed Trump's ego? That's really the question here. All right, I have to cough again, but this time I can control it, so I'm going to mute. Okay, set. While many of the president's allies believed he should only focus on the states he won in 2016, but now appears to be at risk of losing in November, Michigan, Arizona, Florida, and several others, Oklahoma seemed a safer bet for a rally that was quickly assuming oversized importance both in the West Wing and at the campaign headquarters. Trump's campaign is not driven in 2020 by what he needs to do tactically. It's what emotional needs the president wants to have fulfilled in that moment. It's going to be a disaster. Though Trump formally launched his campaign a year ago in Orlando, he started telling people in recent weeks that the Tulsa event was the real launch. He reasoned that his abysmal poll numbers were only because the coronavirus lockdowns, and posited that, sorry, I'm again struggling. It's been a bad week. That was a productive cough, though. I'm having a productive cough. I don't know if I picked up some sort of rhinovirus, but it doesn't seem to be corona yet. So let me try that again. Trump reasoned his abysmal poll numbers were only because of the coronavirus lockdowns, and posited on several occasions that he hasn't been trying to run against Biden yet. Yeah, that must be it. It must be the fact that you're not actively trying to tear Biden down more, even though you're spending millions of dollars in ads doing it, and his lead just continues to grow. But, Trump doesn't have Trump's reality involves him always being the victim and other people always being responsible for his failures. He's persecuted, and nothing is ever his fault. The rally came the same day the Trump campaign announced it had raised $74 million in May in conjunction with the Republican National Committee. That was actually $7 million less than what Biden and the Democratic National Committee raised. So the incumbent president is being out-fundraised by his Democratic challenger. That speaks again to the weakness of the Trump campaign, the Trump re-election campaign. So as someone, I worked as a fundraiser on campaigns. It was one of my first jobs, working on a campaign. And so I understand the role of fundraising. Look, you can hate, I understand why people get mad about money in politics. I get it. But until you change the rules of the game, don't hate the player, hate the game. So the fundraiser is the person. You can demonize them, and you can smear them and slam them for being sellouts or whatever else. But you know what? The campaign manager doesn't get paid if there's no fundraiser. And there are no signs to be put out or no events being held without the fundraiser. So fundraising on a campaign is absolutely vital. It is your lifeblood. It is how you pay your staff. It is how you have your facilities rented. It is how you buy your promotional materials. And most importantly, it's how you get your message across. So having enough money on hand to keep your staffers working and give them a good, decent hourly rate and give them health care and included, you need the fundraiser to do all that. Oh, I see someone spamming again. Goodbye. Yeah, I already hid them. I mean, if they're going to spam the channel, there's one person who's clearly such a sad... Let's just all laugh at them. Think about how sad you are to sit on a chat and try to disrupt it. Oh, what a pathetic loser. They must really, really love Donald Trump, and they must be so angry. I'm so angry that Trump thinks don't say bad things about my daddy. Hey, Kevin. How are you? No, I don't think that's the real Kevin Logan. Is that? I don't think so. Anybody could impersonate Kevin Logan and type penis in the chat. Yeah, it doesn't take them long to start spamming. That's because they're just so emotional they can't handle it. Oh, I can't hear bad things heard outside about my King Emperor. It's so painful for me to watch him be humiliated. Let's disrupt things. Let's draw attention to myself so I can take it off of Trump. Possibly. All right, this is very entertaining. It's a nice way to break up. It just shows the pathetic desperation of Trump fans. So this is fun. All right, the rally. So for many advisors, particularly those who worked on the president's 2016 campaign, the rally was regarded as a return to normal, after what had been one of his roughest stretches of his presidency. And this is something that Trump hasn't grasped yet. This is the new normal. Pandemic life is the new normal. Face masks are the new normal. Social distancing, the new normal. And this is it. Like, until we have a vaccine and we have widespread herd immunity, this is the new normal. The rally is a great signal to the rest of the country that it's time to get things moving again, defying all reality and facts, which came smashing down on Trump's head. Americans, according to some campaign communications dweeb, Americans will now see the contrast between the president's record of accomplishment versus the history of failure Biden brings to the table. You know what the failure was? Of Trump trying to appeal to people in Oklahoma. Even they won't turn out for him. But nearly as soon as Trump announced his rally from a White House cabinet room, quote, "A beautiful new venue, brand new, we're looking forward to it," he said, the problems began. Upon advice from lawyers, the campaign applied a liability waiver to the online sign-up form for potential attendees, warning, quote, "You and any guests voluntarily assume all risks related to exposure to COVID-19. Come die for Trump 2020. Gee, it doesn't sound inviting, does it? Doesn't sound like a slogan that you'd want to use on a regular basis, but that seems to be what Trump is going for. Neither Trump nor his campaign, because they're in a white supremacist bubble, were aware that the date they'd selected coincided with Juneteenth, because they're white supremacists and they're racists and they don't care about other Americans. They just care about white Americans and any American who is willing to sell out their community in order to make gains within the Trump sphere. Even after the date was pointed out, some of the Trump campaign aides and White House staffers downplayed any issues, insisting it wasn't unusual to hold campaign events on holidays. Yeah, isn't it interesting how not having any people of color in your decision-making process actually leaves out important information and life experiences and perspectives that would be very helpful to know before you make these decisions so you understand the media implications. But if all you do is surround yourself with white supremacists, which is what he does, then of course you're not going to care about these things. You're not going to value these things. And that's why representation matters. But this June 19th was not like past years. Amid a national outpouring of grief and anger following Floyd's death, the holiday had assumed a special significance in highlighting the country's racist history. Can we have some home truths? White people? Why do we keep talking about Juneteenth as if it was like a passive event that just happened? Like, it wasn't like, why don't we talk about the fact that it was white Americans who basically genocided their black American neighbors? Why can't we talk about it in that kind of truthful history? Why can't we say, the holiday, which happened to occur on a day when white Americans murdered over 300 black citizens out of jealousy and racial hatred in Tulsa. Why don't we just say that? Because that's the truth. Where was I? Yes. It is assumed a special significance in highlighting the country's racist past. No. Highlighting systemic racism by white people against black people in America. This is part of the problem. We can't just talk about the problem. We need to be able to just say what happened. White racist people killed innocent black people, and those white racists got away with murder because they had a white supremacist government in operation to protect them, and we still have that structure today. That's the truth. After a black Secret Service agent explained the significance to the president. Do you understand this? It was only because there was representation in the Secret Service. Like they're not white, well, I mean, they might be white supremacists, and some of them, I don't want to just give them all a cosign. But you have diversity in hiring and diversity in background and diversity in experience as well as professionalism. Having somebody in the room is so important. And you keep thinking, oh, well, white men can represent the interests of women. White men can represent the interests of black people. And that's true. You can not be a member of a group and still be what Hannah Pitkin would call do substantive representation. You can take the substance of their concerns and give them voice. But you will never actually be able to draw on that experience. Even if you listen to people, understand them, and say, yes, I will be your advocate as your elected representative, you will never be able to bring that experience to the table because that is not your lived experience. And so if you want people who have those lived experiences to bring in their expertise and perspective, then they need to be at the table. So you need descriptive as well as substantive representation. And Trump obviously had none because it wasn't even his campaign staffers who explained to this white supremacist Ku Klux Klan horrible, evil antichrist in the White House. It was one of the people protecting him who had to explain how to unracist the date for Trump. All right, so after a black Secret Service agent explained the significance to the president, and after Trump pulled his orbit to find no one, after Trump pulled his orbit to find no one who had heard of Juneteenth. Why would just imagine that. Imagine being in charge of an entire country and having nobody in your orbit that had ever heard about this massacre that white Americans committed against black Americans. That's how white supremacy blinds us. It tries to keep you in the dark. It tries to whitewash, literally, all of white people's sins out of American history. Because when we look at them, we realize how much we've fallen short of our own goals and our own ideals. The president began to consider changing the date. He also heard directly from James Langford, an Oklahoma Republican, who told him a date change would be wise. See, even like the white people in Oklahoma were like, yeah, maybe Mr. President, don't pick that date. Trump agreed, but he told his campaign advisors to schedule the rally before Juneteenth. He wanted to preempt, hey, let's talk about me. A Thursday, rather than move the rally to a day later to Saturday. Why? Trump explained that Saturday evenings were the television rating void, and he wanted massive viewership for his first campaign foray in months. It doesn't have to anything to do with Oklahoma voters, with getting his message out. He just wants the media Viagra. He needs a hit. He's a junkie. He's a junkie for attention and being the person talked about. And giving a narcissistic, like, sociopath like Trump, who is now declining with increasing signs of dementia, reducing his impulse control. Everything is about, he's just, he's a narcissist. He's a completely self-centered black hole. Instead, Trump's aides convinced him that a weekend would draw larger crowds because potential attendees would not be at work, and the campaign announced it was scouting outdoor venues to accommodate an overflow crowd unable to fit inside the 19,000-person capacity box center. For the past week, the rally has consumed Trump's attention. Imagine, like, all week, it's like, oh, my rally, oh, my rally, oh, my rally. And then it was so shit. Sorry, I have to cough again. Sorry, guys, I don't mean to keep coughing at you. The president invited Oklahoma's governor to the White House on Thursday for a roundtable that was also a venue for Trump to hype his event. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Look at me, 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 look at me now. Woo. And then he just totally... Oh, that's so good. We're going to be in Oklahoma, and it's a crowd like, I guess, nobody's seen before. We have tremendous requests for tickets, like I think probably has never happened politically before, Trump said. Later, during the same event, Trump appeared to idly scroll through his phone, while two women business owners detailed their experience during the pandemic. Oh my God, he's so unfit for office. He's so evil. Can you imagine that? Two people who you're the president of Americans during the middle of a pandemic. Two women are telling you their experiences as business people, as business owners, how they're struggling. And you're zoning out so you can check stuff on your phone. He is such a complete... I know that the right used the term cancer, overused it. I mean, that's very sort of 2014, 2015 language. But he is just like a tumor. He's a horrible, horrible, like, destructive force to the White House. On Friday, with no events on his schedule, because, why would the president work? He's only, the president. Trump appeared to be focused on the next day's rally. He threatened potential protesters on Twitter, saying they would not be afforded gentle treatment if they came to this event. Upon learning there would be a curfew in place on the 3 nights surrounding the rally, Trump phoned the mayor of Tulsa to protest. Trump tweeted afterwards the mayor had agreed to rescind the curfew for his supporters who were camped outside. Special treatment. He always wants special treatment, and it's not going to help him. Can you imagine? Sorry, can you imagine being one of the people who slept outside for 2 days to get into a half-full rally? What are you doing with your life? Yeah, he might be, well, I mean, in terms of being a junkie for the attention, I mean, I don't know. I know people have speculated on the Adderall, and I don't know enough about Adderall use or anything related to it. But in terms of needing media attention, needing the buzz, he's definitely an addict in that form. What was that? Does having women, black people in positions of power change the underlying structures, though? Okay, so in and of itself, it won't change the structures, but it will sort of like, if you have enough people, and also you have to have people inside who are white people who understand the structures need to be changed. So if you think about it, like, people who are blinded by white supremacy or are ignorant because they grew up in an education system like I did that kind of hides white supremacy, people who are already afflicted with that blind spot, that racist blind spot, can't change the structure. So you need people from different perspectives and different lived experiences to come out and give a multifaceted 360 view. So while it's not the job of women and people of color to fix racism in power structures, right? That's a cooperative effort that everybody should be involved in. It does provide an essential element that cannot be provided simply by having a group of white men in the room. White men in the room consulting themselves will not fix the problems of structural racism by living in a white bubble. You do need descriptive and substantive representation. And so, yes, we see that if you have somebody from a different background, it does have an effect. It's not going to magically change structural problems. But merely having somebody in the room does have an effect. Like, if that Secret Service person had not been black and had not explained to the president what Juneteenth was and its significance, then maybe he would have gone ahead with it. So, and there's a great book called Space Invaders. I can't remember the author now. But merely the presence of somebody from an outside, like if you have a bunch of white cis guys in a room doing politics, merely having a woman in the room reminds them that women exist. Merely having a person of color in the room reminds them that people of color exist. So so again, it's not enough. So we want to talk about necessary and sufficient conditions. Is it sufficient to just hire people of color and women and all your problems are going to go away? No. But is it necessary to do a good job in addressing those problems? Absolutely. Cool. I mean, it's a good, important question. Representation in hiring and diversity in hiring, people will say it's only tokenism, but it actually has substantive benefits and can produce better policy outcomes, better business decisions when you take into account more potential buyers or an audience or, voters. So, yeah, and yeah, you're very welcome. I did gender and politics, so I used to lecture on the importance of descriptive, substantive, and other forms of representation according to Pitkin, as well as things like critical mass theory, and also just the importance of having people in the room to remind other people that that group exists. Psychologically, it does change things. So by the time he awoke on Saturday, Trump was enthusiastic about the evening ahead. But he soured when he turned on his television to find coverage not of massive crowds, but of Berman, whose dismissal Trump did not anticipate would generate controversy, even though Barr did it at like 9 o'clock on a Friday night to be sneaky in the most obvious, like if you could sort of like exaggerated tiptoe as a thief, you know, like they do in cartoons, and you have like the fedora and that collar up and the sort of the figure is all blacked out and sort of very conspicuously creeping across the screen. That was basically what Barr was trying to do with his firing. And of course Trump doesn't pay attention to that because it's not on his radar. And whose refusal to leave impeded upon the coverage of the president's forthcoming rally. He just wanted to make it all about him because I'm going to call him the Antichrist. Hours later, as Vice President Mike Pence was stalled on his way to Tulsa while thunderstorms rolled over Joint Base Andrews, Trump learned of the 6 staffers who had tested positive for corona while they were advancing the president's rally. The campaign had not initially planned to test staff beforehand, unless it was expected that they would come into contact with the president, vice president, or one of his children, and was not planning to reveal that several staffers had tested positive. Let that sit with you. Let that sit with you. They were basically prepared to cover up the fact that there were already infections as a result of the president's rally. There is nothing that comes out of Trump's mouth that you can believe. And even when he's not speaking, there are things that he's not saying. You know, his silence is deceptive. He's just a completely, evil is a too simplistic word. And also it takes away the moral accountability and responsibility of the individual. They can't help it, they're evil. Like he's deliberately, deviously evil. But the news leaked, happily. And several campaign staffers found out about the cases from media reports. Can you imagine being on the ground, working with one of these 6 staff people? The Trump campaign knows that they've been tested and are now positive, and you have to learn about it from fake news CNN? He has no regard for anybody's life. Really. Trump was furious when it was reported that several staffers had tested positive, believing it, like Berman, was overshadowing the event, the person said. By the time he was departing the White House for Tulsa, the jubilant resumptions of rallies was already turning to resentment. All right. I feel like I've been going about an hour, because I have. I can't believe I thought this show was going to be an hour, and then you guys got me distracted. I need more coffee. I'm going to try to take something, I'm going to say the German Gegen. I want to take maybe a decongestant, or maybe it's probably decongestant would be the wrong thing, but I'm going to try to take something for this runny nose I have and this cough. And so I'm going to get some coffee. I'm going to take some meds, and we'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll continue on with this article. I'm sorry it's taking me so long. I really didn't think it would. But in the meantime, we'll put on some music. You guys can go refresh, make a cup of tea, get a glass of water, make a cup of coffee, whatever you want. And we'll come back to savor Trump's humiliation in a second. So see you guys in about 5. I can put the music back up now. All right, and I'm back. I took some Sudafed, which I checked in the box. It actually expires in April of 2020, but it's only like the first week of June, so I think that's fine. If I die, it's blame Sudafed. All right, so we've been savoring Trump's utter humiliation, public humiliation on so many levels. Let's continue. Trump was furious when it was reported that staff people had tested positive, not because he and his event had caused people to come down with the coronavirus. It was because it was stepping over his messaging. Human life means nothing to him. Human life means absolutely nothing to him. It's all about his ego. If there was one glimmer of light for Trump, it was the crowd. Quote, "The event in Oklahoma is unbelievable. The crowds are unbelievable. They haven't seen anything like it," Trump said as he departed. So, it's just like, I want a Netflix when they do, there's going to be a Trump special. There invariably will be a Trump special. Some kind of series, season by season. We're in season 5. It sucks. All right, season 1 was the first, the campaign year. Then season 2 was his first year in office. Season 3, his second year in office. Season 4, his third year in office. And now we're into season 5, which is his re-election episode, and his re-election season. And if I were writing this, if I were the screenwriter, which obviously I'm not, I write academic stuff, not screenwriting, but I would actually just take this one day and almost do like a TikTok of Trump getting up in the morning and his expectations versus his reality, and really just not cover anything else. Make the entire episode just about this jump the shark day. That would be how I would write it. It would be my way of symbolically representing kind of all of the problems that I think Trump is going to have with his campaign moving forward. And maybe I'm a little too optimistic, but in terms of the writing style, it would almost be like foreshadowing. Tragic characters in writing have a flaw in them. And you don't have to like someone for them to be a tragic character, but just the definition of a tragic character is someone with such a flaw that it ends up consuming them and ultimately being their downfall. That's one way you can think about a tragic character. And this is Trump. Trump's narcissism and egoism, his selfishness and self-centeredness are his flaw, and everything gets consumed. His entire presidency is going to get consumed by this. The thing that gave him, perhaps an advantage against Clinton in 2016 combined with misogyny is just not working out for him in 2020. I don't know. Kevin doesn't. I honestly don't know if Kevin's been wrenched or not. So, but if Kevin starts spamming anything but penis, sorry, we've had a troll invasion, Kevin. No shade. They're just, the mods are doing their job. And Kevin is also a big fan of Banhammer. So you can't really, if they bring the banhammer down on Kevin because he's acting trollish, he's just going to have to go, fair point. Didn't realize trolling was a problem today. All right, so it was a different story in Tulsa. The wide avenue where a stage had been erected for an overflow crowd in the tens of thousands was virtually vacant. And planned speeches there by Trump and Pence were scrapped. Inside the arena, it was only partially full as the president was arriving. Murtaugh, I remember who that is, asserted that the smaller than expected crowds were partially a result of interference by protesters, though none of the CNN reporters and producers on the ground in Tulsa saw any incident with protesters trying to block supporters from attending. In fact, one woman who had a ticket and wanted to show up was detained by police and prevented from entering the venue, telling her she was not wanted there. She was like a guest at somebody's house who had been asked to leave, despite being a member of the public with a valid ticket to see a public official, public politician speaking. Because she was wearing, we suspect, a t-shirt that said, "I can't breathe." Because she had that t-shirt on, and because she was praying, apparently she was deemed unacceptable and was thrown out. So they were actually, it's not an issue of protesters preventing supporters from getting in. Ultimately, aides said, Tulsa was about something far more important than mere politicking. After a dreary stretch, the event was meant to provide Trump Trump with the adulation he craves and to re-energize him after weeks of spent wallowing in sagging poll numbers and critical media coverage. It's never about the American people. It's not about what's good for the country. It's not about policy solutions to the challenges that we have faced as a nation and continue to face. There's no original solutions. There's no problem solving. There's no hope. It's just Trump's ego sucking up everything. Trump told staff he wanted all surrogates on hand when he landed in Tulsa on Saturday night. So aides invited dozens and chartered a private plane to transport them all. Photos from the flight show none wearing masks. Quote, I guarantee you after Saturday, if everything goes well, he'll be in a much better mood. Oh, can you imagine being in the White House? Oh, you're like, Ivanka is like not answering her phone, and like Melania's decided to go away for the weekend. And this is it. It's not about anything to do with real life. It's all about managing this baby's ego. He believes that he needs to be out there fighting it. He feeds off the energy of the crowds. Well, like a vampire is what you're saying. Trump is like a vampire. And that's true. He sucks up everything out of other people. He demands loyalty. He gives nothing back. Trump is an emotional and an energy vampire. He is, like I said, like he is the Antichrist if you want to think about it from like an evangelical point of view. He is pure selfishness. He is like, if you wanted to cast him as Satan, he wouldn't have to change much about Trump. He would just play himself, but with red makeup on instead of orange. After Trump finished speaking, a person familiar told CNN that 2 Secret Service agents had also tested positive for coronavirus. Now that's a little bit different. I heard of the 6 advanced staffers, 2 of them had tested positive. 2 Secret Service agents had tested positive. This is saying the 2 Secret Service agents had also tested positive. So I had seen 6 reported, and it's a little bit confusing there if that means 8 total, or of the 6, 2 were Secret Service agents. Is that it? Oh, I thought there was more. Oh, that was good though. And yeah, it was a total disaster. He was humiliated. And I'm sure he's in a terrible mood today. Bill Pascal, I think that's the guy's name. He was just getting trolled. Brad, that's it. Brad Parr. I don't think he's been fired yet, but yeah, let's see what's the latest. So Brad Pascal is the guy who's running the campaign. He was out there saying all kinds of stuff about how he was gonna, this is gonna be this big event, and it was gonna be so amazing, and you are so getting fired. Yeah, inside the Trump campaign. This is it. Like that's what they're focused on in June, is rally sizes in deep red states. And this is why Joe Biden is going to win. Let's just go ahead and look at, I guess, Real Clear Politics polling. Yeah, no. Polling average. I'm going to say something I know people are going to freak out. But a person on Twitter raised a good point in terms of this election. And I think it's worth bringing up. Joe Biden might win this in a landslide. I know. I get it. I get it why we're all traumatized. I get why everybody who hates Trump or feels or woke up, has come to hate Trump, feels a bit skittish about 2016. And can I just say that it's an understandable reaction and it's an appropriate reaction. However, there is a saying about generals who fight the last war. So because the national polling on how many votes Clinton would get nationwide was right. She won by 2.1%, and the polls said she would win by 3% in the national vote. So they were off by 1%. That is incredibly close for a prediction. if you're on like in a normal situation. The weird thing about 2016 was how those votes fell out. And so people now, because of the expectation that she would win the popular vote, which she did not translate into winning the Electoral College. People have, I think, a tendency to over-hate on polling. They say the polls got it wrong, but polls are never meant to predict the future perfectly. Polls are meant to give us a result within a margin of error. And we always leave out that, not we always, but people leave out the margin of error. People always talk about polls as if a point estimate is supposed to be like a crystal ball view into the future, when it's simply not. If it says Clinton is going to get 3% of the vote, and the margin of error on a national poll like that is like 2%, it means she would win the national vote by anywhere from, let's say, 1% to 5%, and that her number fell within the margin of error. So part of the problem with suspicion of polling comes from people not understanding how to incorporate the margin of error into the estimates. And then for some people, it's just convenient, psychologically or for whatever reason, to say that whatever happened last time is going to happen again. And I found this actually in my focus groups, that we often, in our pre-election focus groups in the UK, we do ask people to try to predict what they think is going to happen. And generally, people, oh, whatever happened last time. So the first time we had a coalition government, these were post-election focus groups in 2010 following the coalition of the Liberal Democrats and the Tories. And we asked people in post-election, what do you think is going to happen going forward? And the last time there was a coalition government in the UK was 1979, and it only lasted like from October until February, and then they had to run, it was February to October. Sorry, they had the election in February, and the coalition fell apart, and they had to have another October election to sort out the government, and then one party won. I can't remember who it was. But someone in British politics memory will correct me on this, I'm sure. But the thing is that people are like, oh, the last time we had a coalition government, it didn't stay together and wasn't stable, so that's what's going to happen again. And therefore, people are saying, some people with an agenda, other people who just don't have a framework will say, what happened in 2016 is going to happen again. Like, you can't trust the polls, and it's going to be much closer than you think. Those are all benign, erroneous conclusions. So by that, I mean, you're not going to go wrong as someone who is anti-Trump, running like Biden is always 3 points behind. All right? Even if it's not true, and it's not true, it still doesn't hurt your campaign to run like you're behind. So in that way, that misinformation is benign. The more malignant opinion is people who now say you can't trust polls, or polls are worthless, or polls are misleading. That actually will hurt you, because the polls are not bad. The polls aren't systemically wrong. The polls aren't untrustworthy. You just have to learn what a margin of error is. You have to understand that a prediction comes with a possibility of error. And so you're really not talking about a perfect prediction. But if you look at the Dem primary presidential polls, this is what I think we want, because the Dem primary is obviously over. Do we have the aggregates? The moment. Oh, wow. Look at this spread. That's what he said. Okay. Minnesota. This came out on Saturday. Biden plus 16. North Carolina, Trump by 3. Should be much closer, or much more safe for Trump. New Hampshire, Biden by 7. Good news. Thursday, we've got the Fox News poll. This must be a national general election. Biden by 12. Another one from Quinnipiac, Biden by 8. Then you've got another general election. This is CNBC, Biden by 10. Another general election, this time by The Economist YouGov, Biden by 9. Pennsylvania, CNBC has him up by 3. In Michigan, they have Biden up by 2. In Florida, they have Biden up by 7. In North Carolina, that one has Biden up by 2. Arizona has Biden up by 1, and Wisconsin has Biden up by 4. Now, statewide polls versus national polls. National polling will not tell you what the result of an election will be, because it doesn't have any control, variable, or regard for geographical distribution. So you can still, if you sample the right people, you don't, so sampling is a whole like methodological debate and structure and has like scientific understanding behind it based on a lot of experience. But you don't have to have samples from every state to be able to get a national poll that represents the nation generally to give you a good prediction of the future. But the reality is that we don't decide it by a popular vote. We decide it by the Electoral College. So while the national polls are interesting and they can tell you the mood of the country, they can tell you whether a candidate generally is moving in a positive direction or a negative direction, or if the race is really tight, national polls will give you that sort of flavor in the aggregate. But if we want to understand where Trump and Biden are actually going to win, the delegate count they need to get to 270, 272? No, 538, right? 270. I got to dust all these numbers off. Then you have to look at the state numbers. And the problem with the state numbers is that unlike in a national sample, you have 328 million people, but you only need 2,000 or 3,000 of them, if they're nationally representative, to be able to generalize about the general population. On the state, though, you have a much narrower pool, and one of the problems with getting good data is the rate of participation and who participates. So in order to get good data on polling, you need people to participate and give their opinions for free, and that's getting just increasingly harder and harder. People are screening out polling firms from their mobile phones, which reduces response rates. They're refusing to give information because maybe they don't trust the news, the media outlet that is doing the research with a professional polling agency, and all these things can lead to skew. So the state numbers are the most important ones, but they're also in some ways the ones you have to treat with a little bit gingerly. And a way to look at this is we looked at North Carolina, right? So North Carolina has Trump at 45 and Biden at 47, but we saw up here that this one here in North Carolina by Gravis has Trump at 46 and Biden at 43. Well, let me see. Trump at 45 and Trump at 46 is pretty stable. I mean, that's pretty much right in line with each other. What changes by the looks of it is that here on the one from NBC Change Research, Biden is getting 47, whereas here Biden is only getting 43. So 47 and 43, if the N, or the number of cases, is plus or minus 5%, that is all within the margin of error. So can I say what the margin of error is? Piss off. I will deal with you later. Margin of error. Yeah, so the margin of error for the Gravis poll is 3.9%, so basically 4%. So if we go back to that, Biden could really be anywhere from 39 to 47 in terms of the range, plus or minus 4%, 3.9, we're just going to round up. All right, and then that puts him, that plus 4 margin of error is also right where this one here lands, at Biden at 47. So even, within this, like, it can, the understanding the margin of error shows you that a result that puts Trump ahead or a result that puts Biden ahead, given the margin of error, really is just flipping based maybe purely on the people they're asking. It's not like a real 4-point difference or a real 3-point difference. So, yeah, there is a lot about Trump that you can make analogous to STDs. I totally agree with that. And so when we go a little bit further down, New Mexico, Biden by 14, Florida, Biden by 11, Michigan, Biden by 16, and Michigan, Biden by 13. When you look at the national trends, Biden is establishing just a solid lead, a solid cushion that is driven, I think, primarily by people who are scared to death of another Trump administration. And I'm not sure how the questions are worded, but those polls that say, are you more enthusiastic to vote again for your candidate or against the other person's candidate? Are you, in other words, are you more motivated by your support for Trump to get out of the polls or your opposition to Trump to get out to the polls? Same thing. Are you more motivated by your support for Biden or your opposition to Biden? And just because people say that they are motivated to vote against Trump, that people were like, oh, nobody likes Biden. Like, this question doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter why people vote. It really doesn't, when the only thing that counts is how they vote. So I don't care if you hate both candidates, but you just decide you hate Trump more. Or you absolutely love Joe Biden and you've been waiting your whole life to vote for him in a general election. Like, there's nobody like that out there in the world. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Criticizing Biden for an enthusiasm gap makes no sense when people are more terrified of Trump than anything. So again, there is going to be, some people will try to pick this up and go, oh, Biden's enthusiasm is so low. It doesn't matter if people are more scared than enthusiastic. In actual fact, it's easier to get people who are angry and scared to the polls. Those, unfortunately, more negative primal instincts, those reactions, are more reliable drivers of actually following through than voting for hope and change. We feel better about ourselves and we feel better about America when we vote for hope and change. But the truth is, if you want to guarantee people go out, give them something to be angry at, give them something to be mad about, give them something to be fearful of. In this case, Donald Trump presents himself. And that fear and anger or resentment or whatever anxiety it is, that stays with us. And it's a huge, huge, huge motivator. Florida and Michigan in 2016, both swing states. Yes, 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 Rory Katz, you are remembering that 100% correctly. We're looking at, really, in terms of swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, possibly Arizona, I think, going forward. Is there a quick poll and map links? Is there a 2020? I don't see any maps on here. All general election polls, create your own map. I'm not seeing much in that way. Florida is always, it's kind of like Lucy with the football, Florida for Democrats, because on paper we should do so much better, and then we just don't. It always managed to get squeaked out by, like, the redneck panhandle when it comes to that state. Although I did see some great news. I'm going to cover it on the happy hour that, like I said, like in Iowa, actually I think we did, they're starting to, there's more efforts to de-Jim Crow our voting laws, and the Iowa governor did an executive order to allow felons who've served their time to vote again. And because we know that people of color and communities of color are over-policed, and they are over-arrested, and they are overcharged, and they are over-convicted relative to similar crimes committed in the white community, that this use of the criminal justice system as a latent method of disenfranchisement of people of color is something that's been going on since Jim Crow. So, yes. Turnout can be driven by fear and enthusiasm. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what empirical evidence you have for that. I mean, we could definitely see that we know that there are links between negative emotions and turnout. Like if you say that you're angry and you're frustrated, there is a slightly higher propensity for you to actually follow through. Or maybe just people who turn out are just angrier people. I don't want to say it's always in one direction. Maybe just people who are more engaged with and therefore turned angry about politics are also the people who are going to turn out. Or maybe people who are just angry about stuff, generally. I don't know. I'm not a political psychologist. I'm a political behavioralist. I look at behaviors. All right, we're going to get rid of that annoying thing. I look at behaviors. I don't try to understand everybody's psychology. Yeah, so that's it. Like, and then his night out at he was just, like, I guess the best way to sum this up would be to look at the Lincoln Project. And again, I just find this red on red violence. So, yeah, I meant Twitter, not tweet. Just go to Twitter. Boomer movement. Moment. Here we go. Can we just get to Twitter, please? Just go to my Twitter. Oh, trying not to. All right, there we go. The Lincoln Project was trolling Trump. Everybody who hates Trump was trolling him last night. maybe I'm not following this, but why would teens on TikTok prank order a bunch of unlimited tickets to a rally, mean the rally was not full and no one was at the overflow? I get that it set expectations to absurd levels, but it doesn't account for the spare... Okay, I'll just explain this to Sam Stein. The troll was the idea that overwhelming people would come, but it was masking the idea that the people who... I guess, one of the first ideas on TikTok was the idea that they were going to cap it. So if you had a bunch of fake tickets, that the fake tickets would take up the space of people who wanted real tickets, and you would basically be blocking. Kind of like what scalpers do. You get in there first, and then you try to sell them on. But in this case, I think what it really did was mask, and we didn't know this. It was masking low participation. So it was really, he could have still had a lot of participation. I don't think that the TikTok troll, because they didn't cap the tickets, had the effect that it wanted in that sense. It did inadvertently, unintentionally have that effect because not that many people were ever going to show up. But more importantly, because the Trump campaign falsely understood their demand, they wasted. I can't even imagine how much money was wasted for a 40,000 person outdoor venue that they immediately had to take down. If nothing else, it caused them to just waste so much money. All right, let's have a look at the Lincoln Project, because I know that they were dying of laughter last night. We'll just go through their feed. So Mel says polls and polling themselves are not bad. The problem is that most people don't know how to interpret polls correct, and there's assumption that cis straight white males will do the right thing. Basically people overestimate the goodness of white people doing the right thing. And here's, it's true. I don't know how else to really... I'm not going to sugarcoat this. A lot of white Americans, vast majorities of white Americans, will say, as long as the economy is going well, I don't kind of care. He can do what he wants as long as my business is running, my job is okay, my profit line is going up, or I see it. People, and I don't know that it's just white people, right? Because maybe this is just the corpulent, self-absorbed egoism of anybody in a given situation. But I think on the left, I tend to think of public policy in terms of the common good, or the public good, or the greater good. Like, I never, maybe I'm weird, but I never in my life voted for a president expecting them to do the policies, that would benefit my life. Never, never, never in a million years. I always voted for the candidate that I think would do best for everybody else in the country. So I'm trying to think if there was anything. I think Obama did something on student loans that helped me. Oh yeah, they dropped down the disposable income rate that your loan would be based off from like 15% to 10%. So your loan can't exceed 10% of your disposable income, your student loan repayments. That is literally the only policy that Obama did that directly benefited my life. So I don't expect a president to ever make my life better personally at the expense of or ignoring all other people. And I'm realizing that I am very weird. That most people do not think like me. Most people think, am I making money or am I losing money? And if I'm making money, I'll vote for the incumbent, or I'll vote for the person that whatever I think will make me more money. And it doesn't matter if they're a fascist. It doesn't matter if they're a sexist or a sexual predator, or if they're a racist or they're a homophobe. They just don't care. They are willing to tolerate Hitler if Hitler makes them money. And that is a large segment of the voting population. So what do you do in those situations? Like, how do you make people who have no sense of social obligations, or their definition of being an American is all about themselves, and all they care about is whether or not they're making money, and if they are, then everyone else can go jump in a lake. I'm going to vote for the guy who's, overseen my car dealership staying profitable in the last 4 years. That's a fundamental part of the human condition for some people. And I can't think like that. I've never thought about politics like that. But I've realized after studying political behavior that is at least in terms of the white population, because that's most of what I know. There's not a whole lot of deep focus group, with people of color. They tend to lump them in with white people. But yeah, people vote to enrich themselves, and they don't really care. A lot of people don't care about anyone else. Yeah, and have elections. So yeah, the Lincoln Project has been trolling Trump. They put out an ad in DC on, I think, MSNBC and Fox and CNN, mocking Trump not being able to walk down a ramp for his West Point commencement speech, and Trump spent 10 minutes at his rally talking about the ramp incident. That's how bored, that's how boring it was. And so, yeah, someone was just showing that the Lincoln Project is completely blowing up the Trump campaign's Death Star, which is pretty true and funny. Like Brad Parscale, for nearly 3 years, we have been building a juggernaut campaign, Death Star. It is firing on all cylinders, data, digital, political, surrogates, coalitions, etc. In a few days, we will start pressing fire. For the first time, they called themselves the Death Star. And in this rally, all they did was get blown up. Trump spent 1 out of every 8 minutes in Tulsa complaining about the coverage of his West Point speech. They live in his head rent-free. You just have to buy media in the DC market, and you can just take the president of the United States off message and get him completely focused on something else. Steve Schmidt, Donald Trump, tonight you sweated and snarled your way through what will be remembered as the Emptiesburg Address. I love it watching white guys smash on each other. These conservative white guys bash each other. Get me more popcorn. Get me more popcorn. I am loving it. Yeah, I mean, at this point, imagine this. 2020 is so 2020 that you've got people like John McCain's former campaign manager tweeting out about that Black Lives Matter. You would not, if you told me this in 2008, my brain would have melted out of my head. What will be remembered as the Emptiesburg Address. The story of your dangerous shuffle down the ramp was pathetic. Tonight was a failure, just like your presidency. America saw a small crowd looking at a loser. Steve Schmidt knows the power of language. And you know what he's doing right here? He's using Trump's own terms and framing and language. The way that Trump talks about the world, Steve Schmidt is deliberately choosing to use those terms back to Trump to force him to see his own failure in his own terms. Oh yeah, this was the woman. This was the woman I was going to say. Not all heroes wear capes. I thought I had this on the happy hour, but I meant to. Shout out to Mary Jo Laup and her video. So this was, like I said, this was the one I saw.
If you've been paying attention to the news, you know that Donald Trump is planning on holding his first...
I'm going to pause it because I can hear, for some reason, my desktop audio. Oh, you guys can't hear it, but I can. All right, let me turn this on. So this was the first person I ever saw mention trolling Trump in this way. It was being circulated on Twitter. And like I said, I'm not saying, when I was talking about the Karen, she's a total Karen. Probably people will call me Karen too. But she's using her Karen powers for good. So this was the first suggestion I'd seen. And I'm not saying that she's the only person with this idea, but she definitely was one of the first people to put out a video about it. So here we go.
First political rally post-quarantine on June 19th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, if you don't know why that's a big deal, I want you to Google 2 phrases, Juneteenth and Black Wall Street. You'll find out why people are really upset about this and why it's a slap in the face to the Black community. Somebody on another TikTok post commented that he was offering 2 free tickets on his campaign website to go to this rally. So I went and investigated it. It's 2 free tickets per cell phone number, because when you register, you have to give them your cell phone number. They send you a code, you put the code in, and your tickets are reserved for you. So this probably means, having worked on a political campaign this past fall, it probably means that I'll start getting text messages from his campaign. All I have to do to get rid of those is text stop. That's all you have to do. Once you text stop, they have to stop texting you. That's the law. They have to leave you alone. So I recommend that all of those of us that want to see this 19,000 seat auditorium barely filled or completely empty, go reserve tickets now and leave him standing there alone on the stage. What do you say?
Love her.
If you've been paying attention to the news.
I hate TikTok because I don't understand. Like, I know I need to probably move over there, but there's no pause button. Very annoying. That was the woman. That was the person I saw. So when did she post this? I don't see. TikTok grandma. There we go. I don't see any dates. But it was at least a week ago. Because I remember telling Kevin about it on a happy hour that this was happening. So, yep. Thanks to Karen Powers. Activate! Let's see. Anything else here? This rally made one thing clear. Pointing out his difficulties in walking and drinking a glass of water. Water. What am I, from the South now? Like Washington? Water. Did enormous damage to his troubled psyche. Oh yeah, we didn't even mention that. That Trump had an entire demonstration that he can drink out of a glass one-handed. That's what his rally, this is what his rallies have devolved into. Him ranting about walking down a ramp and drinking water without using two hands. And people were just yawning. Absolutely yawning. I have some bookmarks on this. Don't use TikTok. Yeah, I know it's kind of, yeah, TikTok is basically short-term videos. My impression is it definitely skews younger. There's a lot of music. TikTok started off as people doing music, kind of like lip syncing or taking little bits of music and making videos with it. And then there was a whole fair use of the music stuff, and I think it's just involved in sort of just a mini take. If you don't want to think about anything or really engage with it intellectually, you can just put an idea on TikTok, and they're good. They're like a post-it note. If YouTube, this show is a long form essay that most people will not sit through, TikTok is like a post-it note. So, here it is. This is the outdoor venue that they're
young people
down.
And K-pop fans who ordered tickets with no intention of going.
Yeah, the K-pop crowd again. Enter player 3, as Kevin mentioned. Pink was also throwing shade at Trump. What was I looking for in particular? Oh yes, this is brilliant. Watch this. No, we're gonna start this from the beginning. You don't even need the sound for this. Just watch where this goes. This was the people who stood outside for his rally. Watch their faces. They're so captivated. Oh my gosh, this guy has an OAN. So go, oh, Yanni, oh, look at this. I'm bored out of my mind, big yawn. But, yawning is contagious. As soon as one monkey does it, monkey see, monkey do. Yeah, actually yawning is, if you see someone yawn, you're more likely to yawn. It sort of, it stimulates that. But it's interesting that the yawn impulse skipped the Karen here and went right to the other guy behind. She didn't yawn. She just stayed there. Oh, she's falling asleep. You can see she's sort of drifting. Her eyes are closing. All right, well, yeah, just take the day, savor this. And we've had so few things to actually be relieved about, any sort of sense of not impending doom or death or destruction or pain. We need to just take this moment and savor his utter public humiliation. Treat yourself, really. Take the day. Just let it linger in your mouth. Just take that moment and really appreciate it. Stretch it out. Because although there might be other ones coming, understandably, Trump is so egotistical and his campaign is failing so much, it's probably inevitable. But yeah, just do a cleansing breath. There are a lot of people who are rejecting Trump. There are a lot of people who realize they made a terrible mistake in 2016. There are a lot of white Americans who are really actually confronting the realities of racism in ways that we haven't seen. I mean, probably the last time you had a portion of the white population this engaged with these issues was around the civil rights movement. But even then, that was a very narrow kind of caste group of white people that were were participating. This one seems a lot more generational and a lot more widespread. And I'm not seeing the inherent defensiveness. Like, I think white people are becoming more open, not all of them, obviously, and some white people only to an extent, but there is more opportunities for honest discussions about the harm that our white-driven, white-controlled, white supremacist forms of power, how they were wronging people. They're actually wronging other people besides white people, and by not saying anything, we're staying complicit and we're helping. So, yay, go Rory Cats. I'm done. That's me. I was actually only planning on going for an hour today. Can I just say, if you are interested in the book discussion, I did put up on Discord some questions about the social construction of reality. So in the Tuesday night book club episode, which you don't have to be there live for, but you should go and watch at any time, we're going to look at some of the propositions that Beckman and something with an L. I'm going to say Luger, but I know that's not it. Berger and Luckman. That was it. Berger and Luckman. They talk about sort of the necessary and sufficient conditions for understanding social reality and some of the assumptions we can make about how people initially perceive reality. So they're going to talk about things like having a physical body, and they're going to talk about having consciousness to be aware of it, and having language, and having a society that you're being born into. And they say it in very complicated academic ways, but essentially those are the points that we're going to draw out of that chapter. So you can go ahead and you can look at the reading questions in the Discord or in the Facebook group on Happy Hour. I think I've spammed it in there, or also on my Twitter. I put it somewhere, and you can read the chapter with those ideas in mind, because those are the ones that we're really going to focus on. Rory Cats, you're very welcome. I'm sorry I coughed all over you. Obviously the Sudafed has helped a lot. I've stopped coughing and sniffling all over you guys, so that's good. And now I'm going to chill out. I'm just going to go and I'm going to watch the Sunday morning TV coverage of Trump's public humiliation. I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to drag this out as long as I can. And I'm also going to be getting in touch with the real Kevin Logan about doing a show. I don't know if we can do one tonight. It might be too last minute, but definitely Monday night. And then the book club Tuesday night, and then D&D Thursday morning, and my time. And yeah, I'm streaming almost every single day. So if you miss me, come back. I will be back online. And then until next time, thank you all for stopping by and spending part of your Sunday with me. I do appreciate it. I never intend to go as long as I do, but I always appreciate you guys sticking around. My coughs are charming. Oh, Rory Cats, you know how to win my heart. All right, y'all. Bye. Everyone have a good Sunday. We'll talk to you again really soon. Be well, be healthy. I've been Christy. You've been awesome. And we'll see each other again very soon. Bye.